was a singer in a rock band, and I still feel the urge to say, no, I want to hear, how are you doing this morning?
Really, how are you doing?
So some of you were at the panel before. I see familiar faces. Thank you. Thank you for coming to this one. This is the panel for the Oklahoma Songwriters Festival, the first year. We're really excited. Everything's been really awesome. The show tonight is sort of the biggie that we're excited. The finale, we had a great night at the Blue Door that turned into a raucous evening of fun. I really encourage you guys to come tonight. You're going to hear us talk, but it's not going. This is not going to be anywhere as cool as tonight when you get to hear these guys sing songs. Marty Fredrickson, J.D. McPherson. It's going to be a cool night. Please come out. If you don't have plans to, you need to change your plans. I named this panel "How to Write a Hit Song" with the parentheses being that there's no formula. If there were, I would have murdered someone for it. Well, I wouldn't have murdered someone, but maybe I would have actually.
I believe you.
This is Jim Beavers to my right. Clap for him. And this is Marcus Hummon to my left. Clap for him too. These guys have written like amazing songs. I have been blown away to get to sit around and listen to them play them, and can't wait for tonight. My favorite part of tonight is going to be listening to them sing their songs. So it's been cool. I so appreciate them being here. There's not a formula for writing a hit song, but you're songwriters, and you want to know what the hell. Like, what do I do? How do I do it better? And we can't really tell you that, but what I thought we'd do today, and then we'll open it up for you guys to ask questions. But Marcus is having trouble with this microphone. Is this being filmed? I hope. There's been an interesting conversation that's happened in the writing rooms here and back in Nashville that I thought I would sort of. I'm going to talk about a couple songs that I've written, and then I'm going to ask these guys to do the same, and they can sort of angle it however they want. The way I'm going to do it is that there's this notion of sort of purposeful writing, which is today I'm going to write a song that's like would be perfect for Kenny Chesney. I always say Kenny Chesney. I don't know why he's the go-to, but in a writing room in Nashville, sometimes people will say, "Hey, Kenny's looking for songs. Carrie's looking for songs. Let's aim for that." And those days are fine, and we've all done those days. There are other days where you walk in and you just say, "I just want to write. I just want to write something good today." And I know it's the same for you guys. I know there are days where you say, "I want to write something that aims towards this." And I'm going to just talk about a couple of the songs that I've written where one was sort of one way and one was the other, and then sort of try to tell you how I think you can take something from that. And that the first one is a song I wrote called "American Noise" by a band called Skillet that inexplicably won a Dove Award. And my friend said, "I would have never seen you as a Dove Award winner." But it was a session with a guy named Tom Douglas and John Cooper. And we sat down with the purpose of writing a song that for Skillet. Like we literally, Tom got on their message board and looked at what their fans were saying. And he felt like there was this sort of outcry from their fanship that there's a lot of noise out there. And so Tom had this brilliant little prose lyrics written that somewhere in the middle it said American Noise. Then there was another hook that was like about the Civil War or something, which didn't make sense for this band's particular demographic. And we very quickly caught that, and we said, no, but American Noise is awesome. And then someone spit out the word, "Let love cut through the American noise." And so at that point, as a songwriter, you know that's a point where you go, oh, cool, we have something good now. We can sort of almost fill in the blanks. And we really did aim for what we thought was Skillet's demographic, right? I mean, and much the same way when we aim for Carrie Underwood's demographic, we wouldn't mention smashing beer cans on my forehead. We would for most other male artists in Nashville, but not Carrie. So I mean, in the writing rooms, it's funny. This week it's been like yesterday with Marty Fredrickson and Graham. Marty just said, "I can't do that thing where we pick an artist and try to write a song for them," and that's fine. And so we just wrote. We actually said, let's pretend we're a band, me, Graham, and Marty, and we wrote what we are calling our first single. And other days, you are very purposeful. The other song that I'll mention that was very not purposeful, but was just a song we felt like it would be cool is the most successful song I had called Temporary Home, which was just this idea that was floating around that wasn't necessarily this would be great for Carrie, but that it's this idea that the world is a temporary existence, life is a temporary home, and then we sort of expounded upon it and said, oh, and a kid in a foster home, and then a mother in a shelter, but there wasn't anything that day that Carrie said, I need an up-tempo song, or I need a ballad, or I need this or that. It was more like we just wrote. There are plenty of other days where I sit with two other writers and we just write a song and try to write the best song we can. And most of the times that I've gotten cuts, and it wasn't aimed to that person. And I know that for you guys that are a little further away from that, it's different. But I really do think when you're writing, you should sort of. I think you can sort of process this idea of, am I writing towards something or am I just writing? And I don't think either one is bad. And I'll let these guys sort of weigh in and maybe pick one of their songs and talk to that. And I'd love to hear what they say about that concept of the different kinds of ways of writing. And then we'll open it up to you guys. And we'll start with Jim.
As far as targeting a song towards somebody?
Just when you write a song, or to talk about it, maybe pick a song or two of yours where you say, on this day we walked in and we thought we should write a song like this because there's an artist looking, or pick one where you didn't.
All right. Well, like Zach said, it's a lot of the success I've had was not trying to write a song specifically for somebody. That seems to always kind of stifle a little bit of the process to me. The exception being if you're writing with the actual recording artist, then you've got to become a business person. You have to understand branding, as he was saying, Carrie Underwood singing about smashing beer cans. It's the same thing. I've written with Dierks Bentley a lot throughout his entire career, and his what he's willing to say and be about has changed over the last dozen years. And then also you have to understand that artist is now competing with themselves. So writing What Was I Thinking Part 2 for him is not going to do any good because radio already has that. So if you're talking about commercial songwriting and wanting to hear your songs on the radio, that's a totally different animal than just saying, I just want to write a great song today. So you've got to understand branding. You've got to understand, their careers. You got to understand radio. You got to understand who listens to radio, why they listen to radio, why certain songs do and don't get played on the radio. But if you want just a specific example, everybody knows who Chris Stapleton is now. They didn't used to, but they do now. Well, he and I wrote a song called Drink a Beer that Luke Bryan recorded. And we never, that was just a little idea we had. We weren't thinking about neither one of us knew Luke Bryan at the time. And we just chased the idea and let the song dictate where it was going to go. And it worked out well. But it was still a lucky break, with no connection to Luke. He actually heard the song and said, yeah, I'm going to put headphones on and sing it. But, it turns out he had a very personal connection to the subject matter of the song. We had no idea. He had lost both a brother and a sister, and so the song is about losing somebody. Well, we weren't thinking about him, but kind of 1 and 1 made 3 in that situation. And then, conversely, when Chris and I were writing during the last 2 years, we were writing more for something that he would do, which is a very different thing that Luke Bryan could do, especially vocally. Stapleton could do whatever he wants to. So that kind of opens you up a lot. And so then he would say, I'm going to need tempo songs on my record, So we would put the guardrails up and just say, okay, we're not going to slip into a slow waltz or a ballad or anything. Because you've got that covered. You need other things. So, you kind of have to be able to wear two hats. It really just depends on the situation.
Yeah, and I also want these. Once Marcus talks a little bit about this idea of writing and what you're aiming for, I want them to back up and tell a little bit about how they sort of started, which I think will maybe give you guys some insight into into where you are and where you guys want to be. And I know we touched a lot about copyright and publishing and ASCAP and BMI in the last panel that some of you were here for. But we can go back and kind of touch on that and get these guys' perspective on some of those questions too.
Yeah,
Marcus.
That's actually a good place for me to start from because it affects my approach in songwriting. When I got to Nashville, sorry, come up on it? Yeah. I was just, all I wanted to do was be a recording artist, be an artist, be a what I do is I sing, play different instruments. I kind of wanted the whole package. I wanted to paint my album cover, I wanted to be like T for the Tillerman, Cat Stevens. That's what I wanted. I felt that the album itself was a remarkable, as it is, art form, and that it was a huge aesthetic statement, and I wanted to be part of every aspect of it, from production down to playing instruments, and I chased that dream for a decade in Nashville, and had just a kind of an awful time of it in one sense. In another sense, a great time of it. I had 4 major label development deals. So what that actually means before I put an album out. So that means that somebody gives you, they sign a huge contract, it takes a long time, takes money, and then they give you a little bit of dough to go in and cut 3 songs, and then they say yay or nay. So I spent a decade doing that and being told nay. And to the degree that I played with my band, really the thing that the continuum in all this is I had a band called the Pretty Red Wing, and we're just a club band based around a guy, myself, who wrote everything from Afro pop to bluegrass to gospel style, ballads on piano and funky. We were sort of like an utter hybrid. And so everybody wanted to dance, but nobody wanted to get married, and this went on for a long time. And people would call me and they'd say, like, hey, who's the best lighting guy? I knew things like that around town because someone else was going to have a showcase, which was probably going to work out. So I played that and worked it. And eventually Paul Worley, who was a friend of mine, there's a saying in Nashville, you finally get a deal when your best friends become presidents of record companies. Basically, that's what happened. Somebody went in, Paul Worley, what I think of sort of the good guys, and Scott Simon, who had signed this group, the Dixie Chicks, and he was their attorney, but he was also a record guy and a publishing guy, and I'd known him. And these were my friends and stuff, and so they went in and they gave me a development deal that actually turned into a record deal, but it was not to be wildly commercial. And, I had songs on that record that eventually went on to be big hits for other people. I had Bless the Broken Road on that, if you know that song, and I played it on piano with the band, with the Pretty Red Wing, and that was the original piano version that the Flats guys know and aimed for. And I remember really trying to get the label to put that out because I thought it was just a beautiful song and the story behind it and all this stuff. And, no luck. So that's how that works. They put something else out. It didn't do well. I think the entire state of Texas never played like anything on my record, which is bizarre because I have family in Texas. It's like the whole thing was weird, but it wasn't. It's some level it wasn't meant to be. And this affects me as a writer, in the sense that when I got to town, I wrote alone, and I come from that. I come from folk and folk rock and all that. And then I got into Nashville, and I realized there's this deep culture of co-writing. And I was brought along slowly into it by really another generation of writers that, for the most part, are not really doing much anymore. But I found it to be beautiful. I found it to be potentially beautiful. I found that there were great collaborations, and that the interesting thing about the way that Nashville focuses on the culture of co-writing is that it creates a matrix. It creates a web of relationships, and in its best form, we are all very aware of each other's work, and hopefully we're not so ambitious and mean-spirited to not actually enjoy each other's work. And in its best form, I remember friends of mine, like people that you guys would know, like Casey Musgrave. So she was a gal that was at Warner Chappell and I was, and we were writing because I just loved her. And she liked the work that I did. And I remember then she started playing this little club called The Basement, which is about a third of this size of this room. And the Osborne Brothers, same club. And then my son, who has a deal, like we were playing together as the Hummins, and we would go to this little funky club, and it was beautiful, like the Blue Door is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And American art happening right in front of you, right? You know, and I think of things like that. I think of the richness of that, the richness of enjoying the work of others, of being part of the community. Carrie said earlier, talking about creating community, whether it's here or it's in Nashville. I mean, it is absolutely critical, and also it makes life better. It's just more fun. It's more interesting. So I started to join in on that, and I don't regret it at all. I still write a lot by myself, and partly to make sure that the pipes were kind of clear, I started writing kind of wacky, a little bit of theater and choral work, even opera. I've tried some different things, worked with Nashville Opera Company and traveled around in different theater companies, a little bit of off-Broadway stuff. And that was very helpful. All of that was written so alone. It was the collaborative element there is working with directors, working with choreographers, working with actors. And so it's highly collaborative, but I chose in that world to be right alone. I thought, well, that's going to be my oasis for that. But today in writing, in trying to, you have to add into this picture too, married, kids, college, right? These are, this is real. And there is nothing wrong with making an honest dollar on a song. Let me tell you, I mean, it's not, if you're not happy, if someone pays you some money for a song and you're not happy, there's something wrong with you. It's not baseball money usually, but it's like, it's fine. It's a great, this is a beautiful thing for that actually to happen. So I do like that. I would love to continue to make money and continue to get to do what I do. But when I work, my version of what we've been talking about is that I am not able to aim at artists outside of being in their presence. If I'm with an artist, which I like to do because I am an artist, because I came up doing records with Columbia and then a rock deal in the UK on Track Records. And that is how I think. I don't think any other way. So when I'm in the presence of another artist, I want to find the deep respect where I'm listening to what they need to say. But the thing about it is, the truth is, it doesn't work unless they want to say what I want to say. At least not for me. I have not been able to. Maybe I can't humble myself that much. I don't know. Possibly. But I know the only way it works is if it was an overlay. It's an overlay of artistry. And we find a common ground. And then we seek to do what great songs do, which is to express the human experience. And then it's just joy. I mean, that's the joy part.
We should just let him talk the whole time. It's inspiring stuff.
Almost did. That
no.
Sorry. But, I wanted to go to what you said. Like, sometimes the way you came in, it does affect how you do business, because if I didn't come in that way, I wouldn't have maybe the particular approach that I have.
Yeah, and so to that point, the way I came in was very simple. I was in a rock band. I graduated from the University of Oklahoma and was literally on my way to law school. And my rock band got a record deal with a label that went bankrupt 6 months later, but I thought it was the most important moment of my life and told my dad that I'm going to give the music thing a year. And it's been 18 and we're still, the jury's still out. So the cool thing, the theme that I see emerging that I think is pretty cool is community and collaborating. And, even Marcus, who, just sounded like a musical isolationist, but he's very collaborative when he's in the room with people. I've been in it, and it is beautiful. And the way I came up, and I'm gonna attach this to actual pertinent business, a business tip, which is I was in a rock band and we toured. We let every band that we kind of liked, we asked them to come, and sometimes that meant that there were 3 opening bands before we finally got on stage at midnight. And the truth is that, and I know some of you are artists and some of you aren't. And so apply this to, if you're not, apply it to other relationships. But weirdly, 10 bands that opened for us, beginning with Bowling for Soup, who we took on their first national tour. That was my first cut. Last month, I got a cut with a guy who the Nixons let do the West Coast run, a band called the Exies. And so, again, I know not all you guys are touring musicians, but I made these connections, and I I was always as generous and helpful as I could be with every one of them, because there's this cliche that, well, who you are an asshole going up will remember you when you're coming down. And so that's the way I sort of got into it. And it does affect the way I work. And I also have to morph into other situations. And I know that most of you guys are just songwriters that want to know, and again, we'll get to this, and we got to it this morning, but what do I do with my song? And I'm going to allow you guys to ask us that, and we'll do our best to be unable to answer the question, but try. But I want Jim to talk a little bit, because he had a unique sort of entrance into where he is now.
Okay. I'm not from Oklahoma. I'm from Texas, across the river. So I don't really know anybody out there. So I'm going to say what I wish I would have heard before I try to become a writer. Okay. If the name of the panel is How to Write a Hit Song, and I'm going to speak specifically about Nashville and pretty much country music. I know that there's people who aren't about that, but a lot of it's going to. Are there people who are? Because I'll just shut up if otherwise. Yeah, a few. All right. If you're asking me how to write a hit song, I'm going to go ahead and assume you know how to rhyme words. I'm going to assume you know what a chorus is. I'm going to assume you know what song structure is. I'm going to assume you know what melody is. Keep it around 3 minutes, because guess what? Radio likes that. They don't like 5-minute songs. They don't like 4-minute songs. They like 2:30 songs. They like 3 songs. Okay? I'm just nuts and bolts. There is some wisdom to writing about very common subject matters, a la love. Turn on the radio and count the number of songs that are about relationships. I'm going to say it's 80%. Okay, if you're writing about country, then you can also write about being a country person. You can write about how much you love America, stuff like that. Seriously, there are guardrails on every format. Country has very specific guardrails. You can hit them, but you can't go through them. Where do you live, Zach? Nashville. Where do you live, Marcus? Okay. I've been in Nashville 25 years. I've never met a meaningfully successful songwriter that did not live in Nashville. I know nobody likes to hear that, but I picked up from Texas and moved to Nashville 25 years ago, and the adage "must be present to win" is about as true as you can get. That's where the business is. That's where the writers are. That's where the artists are. That's where the labels are. That's where the studios are. So if you're very serious, moving to Nashville is usually the first step. Everybody will tell you. You need to be prepared to write as much as you can, hopefully every day, hopefully with as many different people as you can. You need to be prepared for a probably 5 to 10 year run before you get any kind of activity. Took me that long. Marcus told you some of his story. Zach's got similar stories. You got to really want it. If you just think you enjoy songwriting, then enjoy it. Sit at home, write your song, and that's great. Music is wonderful. But when you say you want to make a living at it, it's like being a basketball player and say, well, I like it when the goal is 8 feet tall and there's 3 periods instead of 4. Go play that way. That's awesome. But there's rules if you want to play NBA basketball. The goal is the same height, okay? The court's the same size. And you can resist the restrictions of the business as much as you want, but you're saying you want to play in that game. So you better learn the rules, So get up there, write a lot, be good, listen to the radio, listen to what's going on, be persistent. And most people I know who are supposed to be songwriters and do those things end up being songwriters. So that's the blunt south of the Red River truth that I wish I would have heard. And I heard different versions of it, but I never heard anybody just say, look, it's not all about writing a song that you can sit at the Bluebird and try to make somebody cry, okay? Sometimes it's about writing a song about drinking beer and that you could hear over here at the Chesapeake Center when Luke Bryan comes and plays. So, if you're not the artist, which I'm not, so I come at it from a very different perspective. I make no bones about it. I'm trying to provide for my family. And the only way I could do that is to hear my songs on the radio and have them recorded. So I just come at it from a real business side. In fact, I worked at a record label for 10 years before I started writing full time. So that's just my perspective on it, and it's all it is, a perspective. It's not the end-all, be-all, but there's a lot of truth to it. There's probably a lot of truth between all 3 of our stories that don't necessarily mesh. So there you go.
I have to say that I absolutely love, I think you should applaud that one too.
I'm just trying to be quick, man.
Here's the truth. Here's the truth, and he alluded to it. And we have Greg from the Blue Door over there, who wishes he was on this panel. But because the truth is that Greg is great for this city. He really is. He's the Blue Door is an iconic room that people know about all over the country, all over the world, and it does celebrate the notion of sitting and strumming and playing music that is absolutely positively beautiful, and thank you for having that place. It's a great place. I'm proud of it. I tell people about it, like in writing sessions in Nashville, and right there with Kane's Ballroom, and the Blue Door. This state is lucky to have some of these iconic places. So I'm sitting in the middle of these two guys, and I think that is wildly appropriate. Jim really did give you, if this is a symposium on how to write a hit song, he gave you the what's it called at the beginning of the school year, the syllabus. He gave us the syllabus. That's what he gave you. Now, what I will tell you, and we are going to open this up to questions, but what I will tell you is that he is exactly right. I mean, that is the exact truth. But the other truth is that my first cut was a song I wrote all by myself that I just wanted to write for a solo album that someone pitched to a label for Zach Malloy to get a record deal. And the guy looked at me across the table and said, "How old are you?" And I lied and said 29. And he knew I wasn't 29. And he said, "You're too old, but I love track 2 and Chris Daughtry's cutting an album. Can he cut it?" So the line in the middle of these two conversations, and I really quite love the way this turned out, is that it really does work all ways. I mean, and you're here in Oklahoma, and if you're not prepared to take the plunge to move to Nashville, and maybe you're not, and maybe you're too young to, or maybe you're just not ever going to do it, you should still, if you're in this room and you care about writing, you should still write. Billy Joe Armstrong said something that stuck with me in some documentary. He said, "I wake up every day, and even if I'm hungover or sick or tired, I write every day. And if one day I got nothing, I just start typing words. And some days I open my voice memo and I just sing a melody and get it out, and it usually sucks, but I get it out, and I've done something creative every day." Scott Booker was up here before, and he said that his biggest thing and his sort of brutal, honest sort of tirade was that too. Write. He said it like 18 times in a row, I think, the word write. So I think that, it's kind of cool to see and hear, how we've all sort of come at it. I will give those of you who weren't in the room some actual tangible information. Like if you're taking notes, this is the part you would write, which is there are these entities, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. And if you're a songwriter and you're not a member, then you should be. So I would encourage you to do that. I'm personally a member of ASCAP, and there is a girl that works at ASCAP. I mentioned this earlier, that her whole job, Evan, Jaron Johnson's wife, her whole job is she sits and just answers emails. And I told her my head would explode to have to just sift through all that. It's literally cold calls and emails, but she has found something about, I think she said, it seems like once a week I find something that I'm like, whoa, indie rock band from Akron, Ohio. She helped them get down to Nashville and do 3 days of writing. She asked me if I could write with them. I couldn't, but I asked who are they? Are they signed? No, they're just a band I found. So ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, it costs like, I don't know, NSAI, yes.
You know what NSAI is, a National Songwriters Association.
International.
Do they have a chapter here? Yeah, that's a great resource.
You have to, if you're serious, you need to start there. The second place is my sister is the director of the Oklahoma the Oklahoma Film and Music Office, and there is information here that they put out on chairs, and you should grab them. And I promise you that my sister's office is eager and anxious to hear from you, and they will help you. A girl, her mom asked me, how do I help my daughter who wants to write scores for film? And I have no clue because I've never done that. But my sister like she tries to get movies to come here. You know, she meets with like cool people like George Clooney and says, make your movie in Oklahoma because we're going to give you money back, you know? So that office is crucial to anyone from Oklahoma. I happen to know there's some people here that are from Texas, so that doesn't help you quite as much, but you need to start there. I really honestly, I mean that if you're serious about it. And since Jim went last before we open up for questions, do you want to have the last word? Or? No.
No. I mean, if the subject matter today is the nature and genesis of a hit song,
it's not really. That was meant to be
really
facetious, but I'm glad.
But it's a good title because it brings up some interesting things. You know, it's like, how do you know, what is that? And at some level, you know, I guess most people who write songs, you want to have some version of that. And that may not be a top 40 song, but it may be that it so deeply connects with whatever your community is. I mean, I'm trying to think of like, you know, if you're a Jason Isbell fan, how many of you are Jason Isbell fans? Do y'all know who that is? If you don't, if you're songwriters and you don't know who Jason Isbell is, you need to go find that out.
Do that before signing up for ASCAP.
And specifically, go get the record Southeastern. But like when I got that record a couple of years back, and I picked up, you know, the album, like the third track is a song called "Elephant in the Room," and for those of you that know that work, that you know this guy that has now become sort of a new generation's really seriously beautiful lyrical lyricist. Maybe, you know, John Mayer said, of all persons, John Mayer, but John Mayer said, you know, considers him America's greatest lyricist. I don't know if that's true. I think Guy Clark still has something to say about that. But still, Jason Isbell is a real freaking deal. And the Elephant in the Room is not going to be a hit per se, but it's like, it is so good that it's like it's a tsunami. And so that's a hit. And that's another way to look at it. It's just another way to look at it, where art and opportunity reach a high level, like things are shaking. It's so if what Jason wants to do is to go out and tour, and he sort of eschews the Nashville scene a little bit, but you know, then this record came out, it went number one on the Billboard. It did, you know, and I don't think that bugged him, right? But it also went number one on the rock chart, and also went number one on the folk chart. Why? Because he's so good. Because he's so great at what he does. So that too is just another way to just focus your energies wherever you are, just being like, take what you do super seriously and get really good at what you do.
Thank you guys for coming here. We're not done unless you guys want to be done. I can open it up for questions.
Questions, yeah. I bet they're interesting.
I'll answer that question. I'll give you a specific piece of advice someone gave me, but first I'll back up and say that my grandfather, who was the singer in his band called Buddy White and the Westerneers, which I think is badass, played at the Grand Ole Opry in 1950 something in like a matinee show that you basically just had to wait in line. Like I don't think he really earned it, but he did play on that freaking stage, and I love that. And so the first songs I remember hearing were country songs, Okie from Muskogee and, you know, Ring of Fire. That was what I heard. Like many young teenagers in the state of Oklahoma and every other state, I discovered Van Halen at some point and decided I wanted to try to do that. And so I wrote rock songs. You know, that's all I really wrote. To answer your question, I was never one of these guys who kind of make me mad when they come to Nashville and they're my buddies in rock bands and they say, let's write a country song today. I kind of go, no, you're really good at rock music. We should just do it anyway. So when I moved to Nashville, my manager at the time said, hey, his name's Pete Gambarg. He's the head of A&R at Atlantic Records. He's a brilliant A&R guy, probably the best A&R guy. And so I listened to everything he says. And he said, listen, you're a really good writer. You kind of have a thing that you do. He always thought it was that I could kind of turn lyrics, kind of make little twists with lyrics. And he said, you already kind of some of your songs tell stories, not as much in rock, but kind of. I was a little of an anomaly in just my world and he just said, don't move to Nashville and say, now I'm going to start being a country songwriter, because he said, you'll fall flat on your face because you just have to do what you do. And even when I wrote with Carrie, Temporary Home, she said at the end of it, I'm so glad you were in this room, because I think the melodies, I would have written them way more country, and I couldn't, we needed them to be, and it was probably just a couple little lines. Like, I don't know that I really brought that much to it, but she felt that what I brought to that room helped her and Luke Laird, the other writer, steer it from what they may have done. That's really what collaboration's about, right? Everyone does their part, and it ends up, leading somewhere hopefully good. Does that answer the question? Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, we might all have kind of a different take on that. For me, I want to say something, because that Zach made a point that earlier on when I was talking about kind of this subject, it sort of sounded like I'm more of an isolationist. And that's not true. I just limit things. My publisher, I told him, you can only give me 2 co-writes, 3 at most a week. And in general, I like to work with artists because that's what I understand. Now, having said that, through my life, it has been, the way I work in the world is I prepare ideas. I don't go in and just expect that they're going to say, here's my song, edit me. Some people do that, and some people are very good at that. That's not been my way, and it's not been it's not what's kind of worked, and it's not the most fun for me. My fun thing, my happy place, is I think about the artists that I'm going to work with, and then I just think about my own artistry, and then I just start to write something, and I voice it the way I want to. When I get in there with them, then you feel the temperature. You feel the temperature of how things move. I have found through the years that there are certain kinds of writers, this is not true of all writers, but this is true of my kind of writer. Whereas, and the Dixie Chicks are a really great example of this. When I wrote with the Dixie Chicks, I was brought in as an artist that they knew my record, and they knew that was wacky, kind of like theirs. Well, only they were going to be megastars and I wasn't. But I remember that when we would write a song, and it was usually Marty and I, but I wrote with Natalie and I wrote with Emily too. And they'd always go, you do the demo. And I'd be like, well, okay, could you sing it? No, you sing the demo. And then I would go, okay, so then I would go do the demo, and then I would give it to them. And then what would happen is Natalie, and this is particularly, actually, I think it's true to say this is more common that just sounds sexist. I'm just telling you what I've experienced in my time there, but is that this tends to be more true of women artists, that they don't necessarily, again, this is a broad generality, but I think that these guys will back me up on this, that we've had a few great demo singers who then kind of morph and do things. But sometimes that becomes problematic. It's not uncommon at all for a female artist, for example, to really want a male singer to sing it. Stand By Her Man. It's like Lala Lovett doing Stand By Her Man. That's fantastic, right? But Natalie would hear that, and she would take a couple things that I would do, and then she would just knock it out of the park. But she dug that. She liked riffing with it. And so it's, again, sometimes it's sort of artist to artist. And one of the things that I think is important, if you go that route, if you're that kind of writer and you go like, I'm going to be all stylized. Like, for example, I don't try to make demos sound like records on radio today. I go my approach to it, different people have different approaches. My approach is I'm going the opposite direction of what I think radio is going. And my thought on that is that I actually am not good enough I don't really like a lot of the kinds of tracks I hear on radio right now. So I don't really know how to do it, and I'm not good at it, and therefore stay away. So I will run to the other thing, and I'll do acoustic guitar and an upright bass for something which maybe a big country act could make a big rockin', the sort of wall of sound that we have now, which I don't really dig. But to stay alive, what I try to do is I just try to lean as far outside of what the norm would be, just go as far into my own thing, and just know this, that if they cut it, if you're lucky enough And I do mean that. I mean, if you're fortunate enough, you don't know what they're going to do with a song. You really don't. And you can get sometimes it can come back if you're lucky enough to have a cut and you can go like, man, that is excellent. Right? But I remember one of the first cuts I ever had, and it was funny because it was at RCA's back in the late 80s. And I had this song that I did with my band called The Cheap Seats. And it was kind of like a kind of Dylan-y thing, real lots of words and harmonica and rock band. We had a band, we're like a folk rock band, what you'd call Americana now. And the Oak Ridge Boys, I heard, it was like one of my first cuts. I was like, oh my God. And I didn't even really know their music that well, but I was like, I know that name. And so they cut the song. And I remember Tabitha Dykus was the A&R director. She said, would you like to come over to RCA Records and hear it? And like, again, I hadn't had a lot of success. So I was really excited to go to RCA Records. And I remember, which is funny because of the SNL skit, but for whatever reason, they got all into a cowbell. I kid you not. It was this, and they had the guy, I can't remember which of the members of the Oak Ridge Boys, who kind of has a vaguely operatic voice, and it was like, this town ain't big, this town ain't small, it's a look, right? And I'm sitting there, mind you got to imagine, I'm in my 20s, I haven't had hardly any success. And they're looking at me, and they're giving you that look of like, yeah. And I was just like lying my ass off. I was just like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And Joe Galante at the time, he's the record president. He, of course, was not an idiot, so he heard that track and he was like, this is terrible. So they never put it out. But Alabama did do it later, and they did a cool version of it. So that little story ended up in a positive way. But it was a really funny moment of going like, that sucks. And you can't let on.
Alexander Dimitri, by the way, is a local singer-songwriter who we had the pleasure of listening sing last night. So thanks for your question. Who else?
I didn't know that.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Greg. And I can say this, that I wholeheartedly agree that you should believe in your song, your talent, your ability. You should believe in what you put out there for everyone. And I can tell you this, that my buddy Chris Tompkins believes wholeheartedly in everything that he is doing. And a lot of it, someone like Greg Johnson would absolutely hate. But Chris is without a doubt one of the most talented people. He's kind of crazy. He is crazy, but he is lightning in a bottle at times. And in those times, he comes up with this concept of before he cheats. What a cool idea, right? Oh yeah, and before he cheats, he'll think about it because I'm gonna kick the shit out of his car, right? I mean, so to me, I mean, we're all saying the same thing. Us three up here and the panelists this morning. It's sort of find your community, find your vibe, work, right. To quote Scott Booker once again, Scott Booker, who's managed the Flaming Lips to an amazing career. He should write a book if he hasn't. So I think that's a great piece of advice to believe in what you do. Does anyone else have questions? Yo. That's a real big business question that probably Jim could answer, but
I'll go real quick on it. I mean, there's really 3 ways to make money, 3 royalty streams. First one's performance, which is typically radio airplay. The second one is called a mechanical royalty, which is you get paid for every copy that is reproduced, even if it's digital. Okay, the rate right now is 9.1 cents per copyright. So if you and I co-write a song that, let's say, Chris Stapleton cuts and he sells 1 million records, that song is worth $91,000 mechanically. Right? There were that many copies reproduced, and then you and I would split that money in half. So that's a mechanical. A performance is on TV, and a synchronization called a sync is if it's used in commercials or on TV or movies, and that's negotiated. So a commercial comes and says, I want to use your song, and this commercial for Tums or whatever, you would negotiate typically a one-time rate. I'll give you $40,000. You could use it for 5 years, however you want to. So that's how you get paid.
Nicely done.
I was probably going to ramble on.
That was good, Jim. Damn, that's a hard, clean truth from Jim Beavers today.
I seriously, I want you to know deep down, and Andrew Rice, who, by the way, Andrew Rice is my partner in this festival, I would have never imagined this being so awesome. This is really good. So,
am I too cut to the chase
no,
here?
I'm trying to be
succinct.
We're going to take this on the road.
Yeah,
actually, we're going to take this.
Andrew's trying to say.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, look, of course, and I know why you bring that up, because it is something that I'm sure these people, want to know. Like, how can I be in the right place at the right time? And the truth is, again, there's no possible way to answer that question. But what you do have to do, and Carrie, who was here before, who was really insightful, she kept talking about, collaborate, go find someone to work with, and go find, and even if you write alone, go find someone to go play a show with, or talk to, or brainstorm about how can I get more people to see my stuff or hear my stuff, and do all these sort of like administrative things we've talked about, from ASCAP to the Film and Music Office. But sure, I mean, timing. I mentioned one story that the song that I wrote on an album that a guy laughed at my face in terms of him signing me, but he was A&Ring this record for this bald, he literally said, this bald guy on Idol named Chris Daughtry, and he said, you should really just let him cut the song, because our predictors say it's going to sell at least 500,000 records. And the record sold 6.5 million records, and it was just because I was in an office in a room with a guy that didn't want to have anything to do with me. So, I mean, I don't know that some of you guys don't know someone that knows someone that might be able to help you get in a room or on an album. I mean, right? I know what Jim has to say about the timing and luck, and
Let's hear it.
I mean, of course you got to be lucky. I mean, I think anybody gets to do this is lucky, fortunate. But I've never seen anybody do it that didn't bust their ass too. I mean, we can't discount that. But even that story, you put yourself in a position to get lucky, and that's kind of what the game is, if you ask me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's math. I mean, at some level, there's some of that. If you have enough concentric circles, if you put yourself in the right place, you're working hard. And again, where hard work and opportunity kind of come together. But some of the stories of those lucky breaks are the stuff of legend. I mean, like there are hilarious, stories in Nashville of how a song, came to be. I tell you, my first hit I ever had was one of those kind of stories. We lived in a little shotgun house, 1912, the old Victorian funky house. And again, this is before I'd ever had a hit or anything. And so I was on one side of the house playing piano, and my wife was in the other side of the house. I don't know what she was doing. And but in the middle of the house, we had one of those. In the old days, you'd have like big phone machine, and the phone. So I'm playing, and we hear this voice, hello, this is Winona Judd. I'm calling from Los Angeles. And I remember going, my ear perked up, and I kind of stopped, and she's rambling on, oh, God bless you, and so forth. That is so funny. I'm out here in L.A., and here I am listening to a song by...
And so I go, honey, and literally we both run to the phone machine, and she's just blabbing on, and I looked over to my wife. I said, pick up the phone, pick it up, because I was too scared to, because I figured this is heaven's, this is the doors going, walk through quickly, and she's like, you pick it up, it's yours, you pick it up. She's calling you, and I'm like, I'm not picking it up, it's why don't I shut? And all of a sudden it was like, oh, anyway, and God bless you, and I remember being like, oh my God, there it was. That was heaven opening a door. And what did I do? I did nothing. I froze. And so I got this idea, and it sounds apocryphal, but it is true. And I knew that her label was Universal, and I knew she had to get back from LA, right? Eventually. And I knew that she would eventually have to walk through that door. So I decided that, fine. So I went Monday morning, and I told them I need a cup of coffee, and I sat for a day drinking coffee. And on day 2, she came in. And she literally came in a cape. She's like, like the witch from the, it was like, when Winona walks in a room, it was like, it's an event. And I was like, hi, I'm Marcus Hammond. I'm the guy you called from Los Angeles. And, of course, that could have been a disaster. And she goes, well, yeah, I did. Wasn't that? And that precipitated a relationship and a moment in time where instead of Murphy's Law, which is what actually the business is like, really, most of the time, everything just goes wrong. And this strange stars, I couldn't believe it. They're cutting the song, and then they can't figure out the chords because I'm an open tune guy. So then they call me, and I get to play guitar with Don Potter and Willie Weeks and Larry London, who's dead now, and Matt Rawlings. These are heavyweights, right? I'm playing. There's Tony Brown, and then Winona's singing, and Naomi's there. And I'm like, oh my God, And then we finish the song, and then they decide, well, they're going to put an orchestra on one thing. They'll just take one more song with them to the LA Philharmonic. They take mine. They put real strings on it. Never heard real strings on anything. I had, but I didn't really recognize the difference. All these things happen, and then they decide to put it out as a single. And then they did a video, and she kissed a guy in the video. It's like a big deal back then in like 1989 or 90 or whatever it was. It's like, and it was a beautiful record, a genuinely beautiful record, and it went to number 1. And overnight, I kind of went from, man, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to stay here anymore, to having this song, which was really a beautiful song, something I was actually very proud of. And it played on it and all that. And it changed. Everything changed. Didn't make it easy. The things weren't easy from that point on, but that was totally, there's serendipity for you. I mean, that's a bunch of things going right.
Any other questions? Thank you guys I'm sorry. I'll answer that one in a manner that I believe Jim Beavers would answer. And Scott Hendricks, who is from Clinton, Oklahoma, now is one of the most important people in Nashville. Every time I see him, we have kids and we went to school together, so I see him socially sometimes, and I always ask him, "Okay, give me some advice." And it's usually, like one time he said, stop writing songs about booze. Well, the next single Blake released was called Sangria. So but one thing he told me this is just the truth. He said, stop writing ballads, because we're going to cut an album of 11 songs and we're going to do 1. So just, again, do the numbers. I mean, you're one ballad. Yeah. 11 songs, we're going to do 1 ballad. So again, that, I could romanticize about how, no, right? Something in 6/8. But I mean, again, on this side of the table, it is. I mean, by the way, those songs get cut. I mean, ballads. I always get mad because I'm like, wait, but House That Built Me is not a up tempo, and it's badass. But that's the hard and fast truth. If you're writing songs, and if you think I'm gonna take those guys' advice and I'm gonna cold call my guy at ASCAP or BMI. They'll tell you the same thing, submit, I really like these 10 songs you sent in. Probably they're going to say these 2 that have the best shot are probably going to be tempo. Tonight at 7:00 is going to be an amazing night with us 3, add on the amazing J.D. McPherson, who's back there. He'll be singing. He is a force of nature. We heard him sing a couple songs last night, and it was kind of insane. And Marty Fredrickson, who some of you were listened to his business partner and publisher. We're all going to be singing. Graham Colton's going to sing. A couple of my buddies from the Nixons are going to go up and sing a few songs at the end of tonight. So please come out to the show tonight. Thank you guys for supporting this festival, and thank you for coming. Bye.